Hey guys, this tutorial is about Prelude number 4 in E minor by Frédéric Chopin. Whenever a student wants to play one of Chopin's preludes, I give them either this one or number 6 in B minor to start with. You can find the link to the latter in the description. The primary challenge of today's prelude is the left hand. To produce the sound you want, you must have complete control over your playing. We achieve this in 4 steps: wrist movement, voicing, timing, and dynamics. And of course, make them function well together. For the ideal wrist movement, you must find a comfortable hand position. The thumb is the shortest finger and will naturally be close to the edge of the key. However, in this entire piece, it plays the leading tones of the chords. So we need a better placement to signify these. You can achieve this by rotating your wrist slightly to the right, to find a safer spot on the key. Now we will focus on the wrist movement. I've spoken quite a few times about pulling the wrist in my other videos. Here we pretty much do the same. Imagine pulling the keys towards yourself, but only with your arm and fingers. The wrist must stay flexible. I gently try to grip the keys with my fingertips and pull them by pushing down my forearm. To understand this movement even better, hold your left arm with your right hand and pull it in a circular motion while keeping your left hand's wrist super relaxed. Try to feel exactly how your arm, wrist, and fingers move, so you can do the same without the right hand's assistance. It's important to mention that when the tempo increases, the wrist motion naturally decreases. Nevertheless, it will benefit your playing positively, no matter what tempo you choose for. Be patient while practicing, and try to become comfortable with the movement. The next step is voicing. We must distinguish each tone to color the chords. Let's highlight the top voice by slightly leaning to the right, and try to keep the rest much softer. You can hear the difference. With voicing, the general dynamic is piano, so it should be soft and gentle. The composer suggests playing the left hand chords legato in the first phrase. However, it's not as simple to connect them, because we have to press the same keys while playing them repeatedly. Of course, the pedal will be a solution, but imagine there wasn't a slur. You would probably use the same pedaling, which wouldn't make any difference in the way they sound. We can create a connection between these chords by implementing the last 2 steps: timing and dynamics. In my view, the beginning of this phrase is more dramatic and has more tension. Chopin suggests playing expressively. As soon as I start, I will gradually stretch the timing and decrease the dynamics. Releasing the tension will create a musical connection between the chords, which will make them sound more melodic and legato. Let's keep in mind that the timing and the dynamics are an expression, and the critical point is to not overdo it. A small tip: especially when you want to play the chords very softly, you don't need to let the keys go up completely. You can better keep the distance smaller for better control, and don't let go of the keys. I usually suggest learning the left hand of the entire prelude to my students. It is way more comfortable to add the melody when the left hand is free enough to follow the lead. With that being said, let's move on to the right hand. I like to emphasize the dotted half notes, as I feel those are the significant points of the melody. Nevertheless, I will play each of them slightly softer, which adds sentiment to the music. With the quarter notes, I will also decrease the dynamics, but with much more contrast. The first quarter note will be even brighter and the third one even softer. In the fourth bar, I like to emphasize the B flat, just a little bit. I see it as a step that brings us to the following 4 bars, which are melodically quite similar but in a different harmony. In the next 4 bars, I will play the melody with a similar phrasing as before. Perhaps a little softer, to make it sound more fragile and shy. Now the softest. As you see, the slur covers the whole melody in the first 9 bars, and it is vital to play it legatissimo. Here we can also get some help from the wrist to make the connection more natural and to produce much better sound. Let me show you quickly how to do it. Basically, I want to implement a different motion to each tone, to make the transition sound smoother. I'll start the melody from up, and then keep moving my wrist downwards on each dotted half note and upwards with the quarter notes. After moving my wrist downwards, I also add a slight rotation to the right and go upwards with the quarter note to make the connection more superior. Down, rotate, up, reset. Now let's do it smoothly. Here to the left, back to the right. Now we have a different motive. Here I will simply follow Chopin's instructions and implement the dynamics. Pay attention to my wrist. First, I go deep in the key with the G sharp, and then I draw a circle to make the melody sound as melodic as possible. Rotate. Up and down. Here is the softest point of the melody, which with the crescendo becomes a transition to the following phrase. Like in the 9th and the 10th bar, I will use a circular movement, but it will be in the opposite direction. I will start with an upper motion instead and draw the circle the other way around. In this way, you can balance the tension with your wrist. We must avoid the direct attack, as it would make it sound harsh and metallic. Let's try playing it painful, but sophisticated. Crescendo. Here like begging. Practice for some time with hands separate, and try to get as comfortable as possible with controlling the sound by the wrist movements. E minor prelude, in my opinion, features 2 characters of a tragic story. It is perhaps similar to a conflict in a romantic relationship. I like to imagine the left hand as the character who wants to leave, and the right hand is begging to stay. This is the story I want to picture with the sound and timing. How fast it should be is always a debate, and who knows. But we can come up with some ideas by considering 2 details that Chopin gives us. First, the tempo largo indicates to search for a slower interpretation, as it means broadly and slowly. However, the time signature is alla breve, which indicates playing the prelude in 2 instead of 4, meaning we have 2 beats in 1 bar. Let me show you the difference. If this prelude was largo and 4/4, I would imagine the tempo more or less like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. But instead we have largo and alla breve. So my tempo would be 1, 2, 1, 2. I cannot imagine any slower tempo in 2. It would become too static, which takes away from the story I want to tell. The way I imagine playing the first phrase is the following. The left hand will start with more tension, and the right hand will be the one that releases this tension every next bar, very gradually. Make sure to balance both hands and give priority to the melody. About pedaling. I will use the sustain pedal and change it with each harmonic and melodic development. The critical point is the placement of the pedal. If you change it too early, there will appear a gap both in the melody and the accompaniment, which is totally against what Chopin suggests if you consider the slurs in the both hands. For this very reason, I recommend changing the pedal right after pressing the keys with the new harmony or melody. In bar number 12, I let go of the pedal on the second beat and play the rest of the bar without pedal. In my opinion, it sounds purer and creates an honest character. If you also decide to play this bar without pedal, keep in mind that it will be harder to connect these notes, and you might want to put in extra effort to make it sound very melodic. Let's move on to the last phrase. The melody of the right hand develops a little differently here. The tension grows from the beginning, and in bar number 16, Chopin suggests stretto, meaning we need to compress the timing by speeding up. We must also increase the dynamics to forte, which appears only once in this piece. At the end of the passage, we have a diminuendo, and therefore I will fade out with the dynamics. Then go back to the first tempo and slowly die away. Let's try. Don't rush playing the ornament and try to imagine it as part of the melody. In the next bar, I emphasize the C most, which is the highest tone in this piece. I also press the key slightly late, which adds intensity and pain to the character. Here, another circular wrist movement. This is also the point where we stop compressing the timing and go back to the first tempo. Up and down. And fade away. About the left hand, remember the wrist movement I explained before, and try to implement that here. In terms of dynamics and timing, I will simply follow what the right hand does. Before I play with both hands, there is something I want to tell you. In bar number 17, where we have the climax with the forte dynamic, make sure to prioritize the melody of the right hand. As there are wide and powerful chords in the left hand, they could easily dominate the melody. The left hand should be powerful enough, but definitely in control, to keep the melody present. As you can see at the end of the piece, the expression is smorzando, dying away. Next to that, there are two fermata signs. This means we need to organize the timing. I like to slow down and play softer and softer from bar number 21. Considering the fermata, I will add one extra beat to the pause and wait for 3 beats. The last chord will also be 6 beats instead of 4. Of course, you can wait longer, but for me, it is the ideal proportion to increase half of the amount. Make sure to highlight the top voices in the last 3 chords to make them sound more melodic. Well guys, this is my take on designing the E minor prelude by Frédéric Chopin. Now I will put everything together I showed in this tutorial and play it for you. Let's go. The free sheet music with my fingerings is in the description. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and subscribe for the future videos to come. Good luck!